When she spoke from the back. Cynthia wears many hats. She's a spiritual leader. She's involved with Noetic Sciences. She has, she's a book reviewer, a 500, what do you call it, top 500 reviewer.
And I want to let you know that this topic is very technical today, so I do have notes, and these notes will be made available through BEPA. You'll be able to access them either online or through the organization later. So you can take notes, of course, but I just want you to be reassured that if you don't get everything down, don't worry, it's going to be available. And they're videotaping this too, so that's all good. And as far as the talk today, the topic has to do with mastering social media for authors. During the introductions earlier, I mentioned that I will be specifically talking about a book launch today. But in addition to that, a lot of us as authors know that you've got books that may have been published a while back. And these books need help too, because marketing is such an ongoing thing, and social media is one of the best ways to get the news out. So I'd like to let you know right now that when I'm talking about a book launch, keep in mind, think about your books that you might have published already, and think about ways to harness social media for them as well. And there are lots of new possibilities coming out day by day, week by week. Just since I accepted this wonderful opportunity to come and speak to you today, several changes have occurred within the realm of social media, just in that short a time period over the course of a few weeks. So I don't want to discourage you. You may think, well, this is really a tricky field to get into, social media, am I ready for it? Some of you might be on Facebook already, but you don't know how best to use it as an author. Most of you probably have some presence on Amazon, because of course that's a wonderful way to promote your books. But when you think about how to orchestrate all of this, that's what I want to talk to you about today. How to take a book launch and propel a book. There's one that's on the table today that I'll be talking about, and that's 2012, Creating Your Own Shift. That was the book that made it onto the Amazon. It was #1 and #2 in its chosen categories. Just in a book launch that occurred a few months ago. It's still pretty high up there, so that's the book that I'll be using as an example, just so that when I make a point, I can explain how we used this technique with that particular book. We were working with a publicist, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to be talking about that today. Thank Carol for the wonderful introduction. I have 27,000 Twitter followers, not 2,700. So this is something that you don't build that up overnight. It's something that takes time. And so when you hear about people that are making a big difference with social media, don't get discouraged. I think that's my main message today. Wherever you are, you can make a big difference with social media. This group you belong to, BEPA, is a powerhouse. And I don't know that you are fully utilizing it right now. So those are my top 2 points, and I'll be coming back to them through the talk. So to begin with, you might wonder, why master social media? Why do we need to deal with this? Could I see a show of hands and see people that are currently on some form of social media right now? Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that's pretty obvious from the show of hands that if you want to be where your readers are, that's where they are right now. It bridges across what could be a very great gulf between you and your niche market. I am an author for a niche market, so the books that I write are self-help, but they also have a very metaphysical kind of an aspect to them. I've written a children's novel, and I'll be doing a follow-up to it next year. I've got 4 books in print right now. A 5th one is coming out this year, and a 6th coming out next year, so I'm a very prolific author, or at least I'm trying to be. But as someone pointed out very beautifully, marketing is the main thing. So we can get these books out there, but if we don't find buyers, then it's hard to keep a living as an author. Social media is not only ubiquitous, it's everywhere. It's also fast, easy, and cheap to use. Now, easy means you need to be smart about using it, and that is the real point of today's talk. How to be smart with social media so you don't end up on Farmville or something when you get on Facebook. I've done that too. So, I mean, it's easy to waste your time, and so the key is knowing that when you're doing things that are productive, you can have fun, but make sure that everything you're doing is moving you toward an objective, and that's the main idea here. So 1/9 of the world right now is on Facebook, and I think that may come as a shock to you. It sure did to me. When you think about 1/9 of the world population, when you realize many people in the world don't even have internet. So how is that possible? 3/4 of the people who can access the internet now have social media. That's another huge, amazing statistic. And for many people, social media is the internet. When they log on, they just go to Facebook, or they go on to some, whatever their social media choice of site is, that's where they go, because that's how they connect with the world, with their friends, with their family. And 1/2 of the people who have social media access it every single day. And these are very important things to realize as an author, because then it helps us get out of our little caves where we like to be as writers. I know I do. I'd rather be just writing than publicizing. I'd rather be developing that book. So for us to get out there and make a difference in the world, let people see that we have a presence, is extremely important. And one thing I wanted to say right now quickly, I could have a whole talk on this one subject, but make sure that when you're setting up a social media presence, that you're doing this with your business persona in mind. A lot of people make a very basic mistake to start talking about how, well, I had a bagel this morning, and I'm seeing the optometrist later today. And this does not help you sell books. It's not really lined up with you as an author, and you as a person who's getting your message out to people that really care about what you're doing. It applies to both fiction and nonfiction. So whatever you're doing, you can have that personal account where you've got your friends and your family, and on Facebook you can set the settings up. I'm not going to be talking about how to do that, but I want you to keep in mind for every single one of these social media sites, whether it's YouTube, you want your own private account where you've got the birthday footage and so forth, and then you've got your public account. You need to make a difference in your mind and then in the social media itself. So that's extremely important. And then being where your buyers are. A lot of you might not know the difference. What's the difference between Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube? What are these good for? They are changing, they're evolving, but right now, Facebook tends to be the under 40 marketing crowd. So these would be the people that you'd go to if you want young people in college. That's how it got started. And now more and more people are gravitating toward Facebook, but it's very much the place to go for that. As far as the under 20 crowd, they are going big into microblogging right now. I'm not really going to be talking about Tumblr and those sorts of things, but if you want to appeal to that very young crowd, keep that in mind. Just because I'm focusing on a few different sites today doesn't mean those are going to be the ones that are still the place to be for you at the end of this year. It depends on your market. You need to be where your market is. So if you're writing children's books, keep in mind, where are the kids now? Do they have a social media site that they're using? And what is it now as opposed to where is it going to be at the end of the year? It is changing that fast. As far as Twitter, this is real-time direct news source, and also it gives people, such as authors, a way to connect when you're doing an event. I've been surprised when I've had events and I've happened to make a post on Twitter that I'll get people showing up that same day and telling me they saw that on Twitter. It amazes me, because I'm still new to the whole social media thing too. I didn't grow up as a teenager the way kids are now, so accustomed to social media. And most of us in the room, this is pretty new to, so we need to change our habits to kind of come up to speed here. YouTube is amazing, and I think a lot of people don't fully understand or appreciate the power of YouTube. But what's happening there is nothing short of astonishing in terms of traffic. It's going to continue to be a very big source of traffic. Because it's underutilized by authors, you can make better use of it using keywords when you put together a post on your blog, for example, and embed your YouTube video right there in your blog, and then use that to drive traffic to your website. I'm not talking today about search engine optimization, but I just want to put that out there for you, that if you want to increase your website traffic, these are very simple, very basic, easy things to do that are going to definitely make a big difference for you, as well as identifying your presence in the world so that people can understand who you are and you can stand out in the crowd. For LinkedIn, this is definitely professional and business oriented, so it's less likely that you would have had sort of a situation to clean up on LinkedIn where you might have a family account where you've got embarrassing things. Hopefully that's not the case. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to appeal to people that you've worked with in the past, coworkers. It's often used by business people when they're looking for a new employment. As an author, you can use it to, in the very first descriptive narrative on LinkedIn, identify yourself in a way, once again, that is useful for keywords and useful for people who never heard about you on LinkedIn to find you. Use your niche specifications and qualifications in your description. I'm currently the #2 spiritual life coach on Google. When I started, I was #1 because there weren't any others. That was like 10 years ago. I'm still #2, so I put that on my LinkedIn description. That's a very powerful thing to do because I'm finding clients who just do a search. They're on LinkedIn. I've never heard of them before, but they find me. So it's a very powerful example. If you're doing something to support your writing, you can mention that. And if you've got a niche in writing and you want to be sure to be known for that, that's the place to, once again, start thinking of defining yourself. Because as authors, we really need to do that. We need to brand ourselves, which once again would be a whole other topic. So I'm not talking about branding or SEO today, but I'm going to touch on these subjects. Yes?
These of mystery novels. And you may think, why do that? Why would I want to create a fan page for a book? Because what you're doing is you're helping to keep that subject lively for people that have an interest. They are buyers of your books. They are fans. When their friends see that they're fans of your book, then you're easily and instantly marketing yourself. So there is a leverage opportunity with Facebook. And the fan pages are set up so that they've got an unlimited number of fans that can follow you. Now, for our purposes, you can be successful when you have a very targeted niche market. You don't need to have 2 million followers like Ashton Kutcher or something like that. We don't need to be celebrities to be successful with social media. What we need is to make sure that the people that love what we do are able to find us, and people that they relate to, who they are very influential with, can see what we're doing as well. When you make regular daily posts, or even just twice a week, to those fan pages, then you're keeping kind of like a heartbeat. You're keeping a pulse going for that book or that series of books. And it can be an excerpt from the book. I would recommend that you provide original content rather than sales pitches. And you can just always think of it, use a screen in your own mind. If you were to see this, would you be turned off by seeing like a daily sales pitch, buy my book? Yeah, you're going to be turned off by that. So what I do, for example, is I'll include either an excerpt from the book, or I'll be thinking in terms of, for my fiction book, I'll be thinking in terms of the world and the way that my lead character sees it. So for my Karen Kimball series, she's a very intuitive person. She can lucid dream. She talks to animals. She's an amazing child, and she also solves mysteries. So that's an interesting character and an interesting lens to see the world. And for all of us who write fiction, it's pretty easy to look at today's news and see something that catches your eye. Like, what would your character think of this? Go ahead and post about it. Your readers are going to like that, and they're going to be interested in it, and you can keep the momentum going. For nonfiction, it might be easier because most people can read the news with regard to some of the topics that we've spoken about today earlier. These amazing topics that you're all working on. So everybody here is an expert in something, and when you know something special about a field, you can share that. So those are really important things to keep in mind and to make it happen. So I wanted to tell you about the success story. This is the big heart of my talk today. And the book 2012, Creating Your Own Shift, came about through the ingenuity and the brainchild of one of the Examiner.com editors. And his name is Hunt Hennian. And he just put the word out to people that he knew through social media. That's how he found me. It was through Facebook. He contacted me and 36 other authors and said, I'd like to put together a book about the year 2012. It's coming up soon, it's timely. I write about this. If all of us help publicize it and we hire a publicist, we can make this an Amazon #1 best-selling book. And I thought, well, this is great, sure, I want to be involved. I'll write a chapter for that book. So I want you to keep this example in mind, but also realize that when you heard everybody talking today, you are in a unique position with BEPA to make something similar to this happen. Now, you don't need to be putting the same book together, but the things that I talk about, when you realize I'm already in a network, I've got people that can work with me, you have the same kind of support here. There's nothing that we did that you can't do. So I think it's extremely applicable and very relevant for you guys. The idea of what you do before the launch is pretty much everything. I think is best expressed in the quote, "Success is 97% preparation and 3% execution." The bulk of what I'm going to talk to you about is what we did before the launch day. It was about 97% beforehand. And so that might seem daunting to some of you, but when you think in terms of getting these kind of excellent results and having a book that goes up to #1 and then stays, just before this talk I checked it, it's still ranked at number 12 in one of its categories, number 14 in another, and number 68 in the third on Amazon. That was just before this talk. And that's with very little activity other than the launch day. That was pretty much all we did. So if you could have a book that was still selling that well, just like 4 months later, it's definitely worth doing. And when you get a book up to that level, it tends to stay there because it shows up in a lot of the searches when people are looking for books on a topic. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're doing a launch, of course, is the timing. And that's the first thing to keep in mind. You want to know that you're not going to hit at the same time as a big holiday that would be conflicting. It's okay if it's a holiday that's related, but you want to make sure that you're avoiding unrelated events, unrelated holidays. Our book launch was March 9th, 2011, and we figured 1 year before December 21st, 2012 was pretty good because people would have it in mind increasingly. So when you think of your book topic, you need to pick a date that's far ahead enough that you can do all the things I'm about to talk about. And you need at least a few months, definitely. If you do it with just a couple weeks to go, it won't give you enough time. One thing you'll think about doing, besides the timing, is free giveaways. And a lot of us have seen these book launches where there are lots of free giveaways, so it almost seems tedious or maybe a little bit blasé, but people still respond to that. And if you think you don't have much, you can just put together an audio recording of one of the chapters. That's what we did for our book. Every single author that wanted to contribute a free audio recording did so. And then at the end of this, we had an audio book as well. So if you're thinking in terms of putting an audio book together, it's another thing to think about besides ebooks and Kindle and so forth. We then created a bonus page, and we were working with a publicist. I mentioned that before. That was Denise Casino. She was really great. We've got fabulous publicists here in BEPA, people that introduce themselves today. So these are people that can really kind of work as the taskmaster, keep it orchestrated, keep everything focused. You can do that yourself, but it's a big job, so that's something to keep in mind. We scheduled radio interviews in advance. You want to do this in advance also, because a lot of radio shows and TV shows, they've got calendars as well, and you need to make sure that you've introduced yourself, talked about what you'll be doing, and given them some time to respond. How far in advance depends on the popularity of the show. Sometimes you'll be contacted, but usually when you're just starting out, you'll need to be the one reaching out. And so if they've never heard of you, it could take a while if they're quite a popular show. You might get lucky, and they might have an opening coming up soon. Yes?
3 months is a good time.
3 months is usually good. Sometimes, if they really like your topic, they'll want you right away. That could happen as well. They could say, I've had a cancellation, I'd love you on. Especially if you've had speaking experience or they've heard you on a radio show. So you want to start doing this as soon as possible, actually. Even if you think, my book's not finished, do one anyway, because it gets you out there. You can start talking about it, and you'll have experience to fall back on. And then as far as the rest of the social media activities, okay, here's where the fun begins. So there's quite a lot. Okay, you're going to start by thinking in advance of, I keep using the word keyword, and I want to explain it and define it a little bit. The subject of the book that's being launched definitely has a title, of course, which may or may not be the best keywords. Hopefully when you chose the title, it is actually containing some of the best keywords. And these are search words. Like when you use Google, you would type in a couple of words, and then hopefully your book and you and a lot of your blogs and posts would be showing right up there on the first page. That would be ideal. Unfortunately, oftentimes that's not the case. So if you do a Google search, you might not see anything on that first page, and you're wondering, well, I don't understand why not. This has to do with using keywords. When you make posts on something like YouTube, it has a keyword field that you can fill in. This is true on some of the blog sites as well, like WordPress and Blogger, the Google blog spot. So when you make a blog entry, when you do a YouTube, be sure to fill in the keywords. And then when you use Twitter, you can use hashtags, and that's a way of using the pound sign and then typing a word, like we would use the hash sign and then 2012 to help raise our ranking on those, on the keyword list that's being tracked every day by Twitter that shows what's trending. And so some of those trending topics come up because people are using hashtags. Sometimes they're related to world news events. And you don't need to worry that you don't see your topics showing up on the trending list, because that just usually shows 10 or 20. But you do want to make sure that you're using hashtags and that you're using content-based titles and keywords. So content is the key, yes.
This is a very general question about social media. I'm not on any social media.
Okay.
Partially, maybe largely, because as far as I know, when you put anything up there on the cloud,
It's
you
out there.
have given over total control to an anonymous entity somewhere that you have no control over.
Right.
What happens if you want to take something down, you want to edit something, what happens if it's hacked?
I'm going to handle questions at the end,
Sure.
and I love that question. I'll come right back to it. That'll be number one, so just hold that thought. Thank you. Okay, one of the things you want to do with Twitter is make sure that you're following people like you. And I mentioned I've got 27,000 followers. If you're not on any social media, go ahead and get started. Go home today. Start with something. I'd start with Facebook, actually, because it's really easy if you don't have anything at all. I saw so many hands raised earlier, though, so it looks like most of you are on something. If you are on Facebook, but you only have a personal page, go home and set up your fan page. It can be the same as your name. When you get 25 followers, then you can give it a vanity name. You should also have a page for at least every series of books, if not every book that you've written. And once again, this may seem daunting. Don't worry about keeping them all up. Just today, get started. You want to just keep making some progress getting out there. When it comes to Twitter, that's another easy one to join. And you might not know what you're doing. It's a very strange world. So when you first start, just look and see what people are doing. You can look for someone like me. I'll follow you back. I follow everybody that follows me. That's part of how I got 27,000 followers. So I also searched for people with similar interests. So a lot of my followers are specifically interested in some of the topics that I write about. Self-help, meditation, things having to do with law of attraction, manifestation, auras, energy fields, and children's writing. So it's a wide range of interests. When you write, I mentioned the hashtags. Something else specifically for Twitter is be sure to retweet when you're getting started, because it's a friendly way of showing support for others. I'm not doing a lot of that right now, but when I got started I was. And when you retweet, you find something that someone said, and it's just a way of saying, I like that, I'm going to retweet that. That's a positive thought, that cheered me up. And it's a very social way of interacting with the media.
Can you define what retweet
Retweet,
is?
yes.
Like reply?
An example would be, so I would say, like I often post quotes, motivational things, and sometimes just thoughts that I have. But so I like it when other people do similar things, and if they post a quote or something that's very inspirational, then there's a button on Twitter, and I can just push the button, and it says retweet, and then it comes up on my news feed. So anybody, those 27,000 people following me, they suddenly get a retweet of what that person said.
It's like a forward.
It's free publicity for that person. Yeah. So it's a really nice thing to do. People like it. And I would recommend doing that when you're getting started. The other thing to do when you get started with Twitter is follow people back. That's really friendly. And unless they're doing something you don't agree with, and then don't follow them back. There are some, some people spamming and that kind of thing happening on Twitter. So if you don't like that, don't respond. On Facebook, I mentioned setting up a fan and a like page and one for every single book. You also want to make sure that you update your personal page to include the links to your fan pages. And you want to do that on your profile. Yes?
I think they stopped calling it fan pages.
Okay.
It's called like pages.
Like pages, yeah. And then if you're wondering, how do I set up a book page? It's kind of complicated, but you can go down through some menus and find a place where you can put a product in. I think it's a product. And then once you've got the page set up, then it finally asks you, is this a book? They change the software constantly at Facebook. So when I'm calling it a fan page, now they call it a like page. They didn't used to have these product pages, now they do. It's constantly evolving and changing, so don't let that discourage you. I'd say do it anyway. And I'll get to the question about what about the stuff out in the cloud later. Okay, so for the personal page, including fan pages is important. Okay, and then on Facebook you can post events. So that's really important. When you have your book launch, be sure to post that as an event. Even if you just have 25 followers or 50, it's still important for them to know that they can purchase the book and get those free offers that you've set up on your special offer page. The next area I want to talk about is Amazon, and this is the big thing that you can do. Our publicist was showing us things to do with Amazon that some I'd heard of, some I'd never heard of, and it made a huge difference for us. And it's something to keep in mind with BEPA and what you guys can do as a group. So first of all, we chose categories that were applicable to our book, but we could be a big fish in a small pond. So we were choosing categories where we really stood out. The ones I mentioned earlier that we made it to top, the #1 and #2 book on was Religion and Spirituality, Earth-Based Religions, Gaia. So we just shot right to the top of that one. Another category we shone in was Books, Nonfiction, Current Events, International. And I didn't even know that was a category. But the fact that these lesser known small ponds you can be a big fish in, it has a huge effect for the book overall. It has a huge effect on Amazon's internal operations and searches. The third category we weren't quite so big in. That was Books, Religion and Spirituality, New Age, Channeling. So it was a smaller thing there. I didn't do channeling in my chapter. A lot of authors didn't, so it wasn't the big point of our book either. But getting back to Amazon, once you've chosen the categories and you've selected where your book is going to be showing up, you also want to make sure, if you haven't done it already, get started with the Author Central. And this is something that it's got more and more information there all the time. They've now got the bio, the profile. You can definitely post your blog there, and you can forward your blog, so it automatically posts on Amazon. It shows all of the reviews for all of your books, so you can see that instantly. Once you're signed on to your Author Central, you can see sales information, geographic and weekly graphs. So you can see a little bit how your promotions are going, and what you're doing is influencing sales. So once you've got that set up, you want to make sure that you fill out your biography, make it interesting, bring out those qualities that you're recognizing are very unique to yourself. This is, once again, that concept of branding. So you definitely want to brand yourself as an author here. Say things that are unique to you, but definitely tied into what you're doing. The other obvious thing that you can do with Amazon is request reviews. You can look for people, such as myself, that are top 500 reviewers, especially if they're reviewing books that are in your field. Those are going to be the ones that are more likely to post the reviews. These reviewers are swamped with books. I currently have, I don't know, maybe 80 books I haven't read or reviewed yet, just stacked up at home. I get to the ones I can get to, but it's a little bit overwhelming. So keep that in mind. And so what you can do is write to these authors, and they're often authors as well, and you can let them know that you're looking for a review. Usually they're pretty honest. I'm honest with people, and if I can't review it, then I'm not going to just say send the book anyway. I do the best I can. As far as what the reviewers, once they've reviewed the book, something that they often don't think to do is to vote for the other reviews for your book. This is where BEPA comes in. You can ask people here in this organization, please read and review my book. You can think in terms of a publicity function of handing the book out for review. Usually it's a complimentary copy that you would give. You can give an option of physical hard copy or an ebook. And once they've posted the review, you can ask if they would additionally be willing to say, yes, this review was helpful for some of the other reviews that are up there. Something else they can do is agree that the tags that are mentioned on those reviews are helpful as well. There's a lot going on with Amazon. So once the review is posted, there's a section that you can say what the book is about. And you can start indicating, just as you did as an author, you can say, well, this is what I think it's about. That the reviewers get a chance to do that. The visitors to the page get a chance to do that. And all of this makes a big difference. And then on Amazon, you've got Listmania lists. And this is something, if you've never done this, and anything that you feel like, I'd like to explore this, when you get home, just sign on to Amazon, take a look at your book, and if you don't already have Listmania lists set up where your book shows up, you need to. You can do this yourself, and then if you've got a group like BEPA, and you've got some friends, you can ask them to please start creating some lists that your book will appear on. And all of these little activities raise your book up in the searches in Amazon. So every time you've done one of these things, it's making a big difference. And the tags, that's what I was mentioning earlier, for the keywords about the book that people can agree to on Amazon. If they match your categories closely, that's going to help as well. And I mentioned agreeing with the tags. Okay, I need to wrap this up. There's so much to talk about. Okay, discussions are important too on Amazon. This is a very big thing that a lot of people completely overlook because they don't realize what a difference it makes in the searches. So you want to make sure that every time you've got a discussion going about your book, I know a lot of these discussions are frivolous and they seem irrelevant, so you can start a discussion that's more serious about your book, and you can make sure to link to your book several times, just in these discussions. And the publicist we were working with recommended joining 10 to 20 discussions for every single book that you have. That's a lot of discussions. And then just keep putting links in there to the book. You can also create guides, and this is another Amazon thing. So there are different kinds of lists, basically. A guide is not like a Listmania list. It's kind of like, so you want to learn to meditate. And on that one, I would include my book, Aura Advantage, and I'd include my meditation CD, and also other products that are interesting, other books. So it's a good way to get more publicity. Okay, wrapping up what you do in advance, just a few more things. I talked about blogging earlier. One thing I didn't mention is opt-in emails. So you're going to want to coordinate with all of these little microblogs and blogs. That's the Facebook, the YouTube, the Twitter, and all that. You want all of them directing traffic to your blog. Hopefully you have one. So this is something else to set up. When the blog is set up, then you send out an email that announces that you've posted to your blog. And the reason I recommend doing it this way has to do with search engine optimization again. I'm not going to go into all that, but this is definitely the preferred way to do it. If you're not doing it the preferred way, that's still okay. Anything you're doing is helping. The last piece is extremely important, and that's pre-scheduling the tweets and the posts. And you can use a software platform like Hootsuite, that's Hootsuite, to pre-schedule your tweets and your Facebook posts. The free version has ads, or you can pay a little extra and then there aren't any ads. And it orchestrates things across Facebook and Twitter and MySpace. I don't think anyone's on MySpace anymore, but there is that. And then LinkedIn. And then that was the 97% that we've covered now. I know it went fast, but this will be available again through BEPA. On the book launch day, that's when your Hootsuite pre-set up posts are going to start activating. You want to be active for, if you're publishing fiction, then you want to make sure these posts are appearing when people are off hours. Preferably they're at home, not at work, and so you want to keep this in mind. When you're publishing something that's a business book, you want those tweets and those posts to be showing up when they're at work or on their break. There's a whole lot I could talk about this, but usually you want to time things for the East Coast because a lot of buyers are there, so you want to look at Eastern Standard Time. And the peak times for posting would then be 9 o'clock for us, which is noon on the East Coast. Around 2 o'clock for us, which is 5 o'clock, they're getting off work. And then a little bit later, 7 o'clock their time would be 4 o'clock. So those are really peak times. You want multiple tweets throughout the day when you're doing your book launch. And this is the one time it's okay to have a lot of sales pitches. Usually you don't want so much of that, but the one exception is when you're doing a book launch, then you can just keep saying interesting worded posts about, for our book it was 2012, so we had about 20 different kinds of short little 140 or less character posts. They're very short little elevator phrases, basically, that you can post on Twitter. And it's recommended that you keep the posts different between times so that you're not just constantly repeating yourself. So even though you've scheduled it through Hootsuite, you want it to look like a real person is sending it and not a robot or a computer. And then that's when you would post to your blog announcing the freebies, send out the email to your opt-in list. And if you want to buy your own book, you can do that too. That definitely does increase the sales. I think you've heard the stories about authors that have done that, and it's an age-old tradition. On Amazon, make sure you buy one copy at a time. If you buy 10, it counts as one book sale. And a lot of people don't know that. So if you want to support your own book, buy it. Just keep buying it one, buy another one, another one. And, yeah, that's what it's doing right now.
So anybody who buys more than one, you don't get credit for the one?
It counts as one sale. Yeah, be sure to tell them that as well. If you're getting people that, like, I'm going to buy it for all my friends, say, okay, good, but would you mind just buying one at a time? Will it really boost the sales?
It's extra shipping.
I know.
But it's
I
marketing.
know. It's marketing. It's
You'll
marketing.
say I'll pay for the
Yeah.
shipping by one at a time.
Just keep, yeah. Okay, and then lastly, the last bit here is post-launch. Maintain the momentum. This is something to do for your older books as well. So it's something to keep doing all the time. That's on Twitter. Let readers know when you're in town, when it's going to be a public event. Not because you're going for a birthday party or something, but when you're going to be at a bookstore, when you're going to be at a book expo. Even if you're not one of the featured authors, let them know. You'd be amazed that people are going to want to meet up with you and talk to you. Tweet links to your new blog posts through Twitter. On Facebook, keep those pages updated. It could just be a few times a week, but keep those posts coming in. Reward your followers with interesting content that they're going to comment on, and that leverage effect can start happening. So they're going to repost it, and their friends are going to see it, and they'll be thinking, what is this book? I've never heard of it. And you can get sales that way. Make sure you keep emailing your opt-in list with news, such as interviews, articles, and events. All the things you told us today, you should be blogging about that. You should be emailing and letting people know. They want to know. And then most of all, keep that fresh, free, interesting content going. So that was as focused as I could be on a rapidly evolving world of social media.